Have you ever lived with the quiet suspicion that everyone around you is watching you, that they're whispering, judging, or secretly keeping score of your failures? It's a dreadful burden. We act as though the world were an audience waiting for us to stumble. And yet, here is the strange, liberating truth that nobody is really paying that much attention. They're too busy rehearsing their own lines, worrying about their own mistakes. And when you accept this, when you really let it sink in, you discover something extraordinary. Freedom. Because when no one cares as much as you feared, you are finally free to live. Now, many recoil at this thought. Nobody cares. That sounds lonely. But is it? Think of it another way. Imagine you are walking down the street, carrying a heavy mask, adjusting it constantly to keep up appearances. You believe everyone is looking, so you keep the mask tight. But then suddenly, you realize no one is looking at all. Everyone is fumbling with their own mask, worried about their own cracks. You drop yours, and instead of shame, you feel lightness. That is the paradox. The moment you see how little others dwell on your drama, the burden begins to lift. We often live in a state of performance. You smile when you don't want to. You say you're fine when you're breaking inside. You walk as though a spotlight is shining on you, when in truth, the room is full of spotlights, all pointed inward. Nobody is watching your scene because they're too consumed with theirs. And so, much of your anxiety, your guilt, and your striving is built upon an illusion, the illusion of universal attention. Once you see it for what it is, the stage collapses. And in the rubble, you can breathe for the first time. This is not to say people are heartless. No, but they are occupied. Each of us is the center of our own world. And in this curious dance of existence, everyone believes their pain is the most profound, their story the most urgent. So when you sit awake at night, worrying what they think of you, remember this: they are likely awake too, but not thinking of you. They are thinking of themselves. And that realization, far from cruel, can be a kind of salvation, because it means the prison you thought was built by others was always made of your own bricks. The ego resists this. The ego says, but I must matter. My pain, my joy, they must be important to everyone else. Yet, when you accept that they are not, you gain something greater than importance. You gain permission. Permission to be clumsy, to fail, to speak and not be perfect, to walk and not be elegant. Because the great cosmic joke is that no one is really watching with the intensity you imagined. And the moment you see it, you stop performing. And when you stop performing, you begin, perhaps for the first time, to live. Imagine a river. The river flows regardless of who dips their hand in it. It doesn't slow for your sorrow, nor speed for your triumph. It simply is. Life is like that. You are part of the river, but the river does not orbit around you. Many people find this unsettling. They want the river to bend to their story, but the wise find it liberating, because once you stop demanding the universe care about your every whim, you can relax into its flow, you can float instead of thrash, and floating, you find a strange grace. When you drop the illusion of centrality, relationships change. You no longer seek to impress every stranger. You realize that most of the time, they didn't notice. And when they did, they forgot quickly. This recognition is not indifference. It is clarity. You see that attention is fleeting, and so you stop chasing it. Instead, you invest your energy in presence, in being here, alive, with whatever is unfolding now, rather than lost in a theater of imaginary judgments. The ego, however, is sly. It whispers, but if no one cares, what is the point? But that is the point. Life's beauty lies not in being constantly observed, but in being free enough to play without applause. When you paint a picture, not for praise, but for joy. When you laugh, not to be remembered, but because laughter ripples through you like a song. You begin to notice that real care is rare and therefore sacred. A single genuine embrace, a sincere word of understanding. These shine brighter than 100 hollow compliments. The trap, of course, is validation. As children, we long for approval, and so we grow into adults still hunting for it, in parents, in partners, in crowds. But the truth is, no amount of applause will soothe the restless ego. It only hungers for more. Like salt water to a thirsty man, validation cannot quench. Only when you accept its limits, when you no longer demand constant reassurance, do you taste the clean water of freedom. And paradoxically, that is when people are most drawn to you, when you no longer need them to be. Think of the difference between two musicians. One plays for applause, watching the crowd nervously. The other plays for the sheer delight of the sound itself. Who captivates you more? Always the second, for there is an authenticity, an ease that cannot be faked. In the same way, when you stop needing others to care, your presence becomes lighter, more magnetic. You are not begging to be seen. You are simply being, and being is infinitely more attractive than begging. So, what changes when you accept no one really cares? Your relationships become simpler. You stop clinging. You no longer trap others with expectation. If they love you freely, not under the burden of your need. If they leave, and the world still turns. You begin to see love not as possession, but as a gift, given, received, and released, like breath. At work, creativity blossoms, for the fear of criticism loses its teeth. You write, you speak, you attempt daring things because you know. Most people are too busy worrying about their own failures to obsess over yours. And when criticism does come, it stings less, for you realize it is usually more about them than you, their insecurities projected outward. This insight alone can save years of unnecessary suffering. And in life itself, you become lighter. The constant performance drops away. You walk more slowly. You smile more sincerely. You begin to notice small wonders, clouds moving, leaves dancing, the way light bends through a window. Because you are no longer straining to impress, you can finally receive. You stop living for an imaginary audience and start living for the sheer miracle of being alive. Some fear this realization makes one cold. If no one cares, why should I? But this is where the great paradox lies. When you stop needing care, you can finally give it. Your kindness is no longer a bargain, I give so you will give back. It becomes a gift, a natural expression of your being. And because you no longer demand recognition, your compassion becomes deeper, freer, more authentic. To realize no one cares is to realize the game was never about keeping score. It was about playing. And when you stop waiting for the referee to notice your moves, you start to enjoy them. Life becomes not a performance, but a dance. And the freedom of the dance is that it needs no applause. The music is enough. Think of a tree. It grows, blossoms, and sheds its leaves without wondering if anyone is watching. It does not say, "Did you notice my flowers?" It simply flowers. In the same way, when you accept that people are not endlessly watching, you can simply be. And in that being, you return to something essential, something childlike, the freedom to live without self-consciousness. You laugh at your mistakes because you know most will never notice them. You forgive others more easily because you see how entangled they are in their own struggles. And you begin to live with a softness, not desperate, not rigid, but open. The world then transforms, not because it changed, but because your perception did. Where once you felt crushed by the weight of imagined judgment. Now you feel buoyed by the realization that nobody's watching that closely. Where once you feared being forgotten, now you see that being forgotten is a kind of release. You do not have to be immortal in memory to be alive in this moment. And this moment, in its fullness, is enough. From this flows a new courage. You try, not because you are guaranteed success, but because failure no longer chains you. You love, not because it is safe, but because safety is no longer required. You speak truth, not because it will be applauded, but because silence is heavier than honesty. And in this courage, you begin to glimpse something sacred, the freedom of being unburdened by endless concern over how you are perceived. And here is the cosmic irony. When you finally accept no one cares as much as you feared, you become more lovable, not less. Because you are no longer desperate, you radiate ease. And people, like moths to light, are drawn to ease. But by then, it no longer matters whether they come or go. For you have discovered a deeper anchor, the joy of simply being alive, unshaken by the fickle tides of attention. So when you lie awake tonight, worried about what someone thinks of you, remember, they are likely lying awake too, wondering the same thing. And in that recognition, let the grip loosen, let the weight drop. There is no tribunal watching your every move. There is no audience keeping score. There is only the play of life unfolding moment by moment. And your task is not to perform it perfectly, but to dance in it fully. This is the gift of realizing no one really cares. You stop waiting. You stop waiting for approval, for permission, for applause. You begin instead to love, to laugh, to live, and as you do, you discover that life was never waiting for anyone to care. It was always waiting for you. If you find yourself caught in despair, thinking, they don't care about me, remember that is precisely your freedom. If they don't care, you are free to write without judgment, free to stumble without shame, free to rise without expectation. It is not abandonment, it is release. The sky cares not whether the bird flies left or right, and that is why the bird is free. When you accept that no one cares, you stop needing them to. And when you stop needing them to, you finally care not in the anxious, desperate way of before, but in a free, effortless way. You care because it is your nature, not because it is your bargain. And in that shift, you find what was missing all along, peace. Stop imagining the world is watching you so closely. It isn't. Because in that neglect, there is freedom. Freedom to fall, freedom to rise, freedom to be utterly, gloriously human. You stop performing, you stop begging, you stop hiding, and instead, you live. And that, after all, is what you came here to do.